And a good morning, good afternoon, and a very good evening to you, the good people of the tube. Hope well today, hope you're feeling grand and all is well in your world. Hello there, everybody. Today's vid, everybody, is about daisy chaining amplifiers. What do I mean by daisy chaining? Basically, I mean running two amplifiers, but not using an ABY switch or a stereo pedal. You're basically just linking the amps together with a guitar lead, you know. So, that's basically it. So let me just get that. Let me elaborate on that. So in the intro jam, what you heard was my Vox Escort Lead 50 here, and the Deluxe Reverb Tone Master here. They're both flat out. They were both flat out on 10. It was extremely loud. I was wearing earplugs though, so all good. Every example today, I think I'm going to wear earplugs because it's just so loud. But they were running flat out, so volumes both on 10. And basically, how I was running them is basically I was using this guitar lead here goes into the high input on the Vox, so that's going in there. Then it's coming around here and it's going into input 2 on the vibrato channel of the Fender. So out of the Vox into vibrato 2 here, and then out of vibrato channel 1 here, the input 1 here, that's going off to the Gem. No other pedals, that's it. That's what it is. Like I say, and that's what daisy chaining is, basically. It's as simple as that. As long as one of your amps has two inputs on it, you can daisy chain. Because the next two amps you're going to hear daisy chain are going to be the Vox and my Marshall MG. Now, the Marshall MG only has one input on it. It doesn't have two like the Vox and the Fender here. So, I can only come out of that into the Vox. So basically, the next two amps you'll hear are the Vox and the Marshall, and I'll be coming out the input of the Marshall into the low input on the Vox, and then out the high impedance input on the Vox to my guitar. I really hope this is making sense. So as long as one of your amps has two inputs, you can daisy chain amplifiers together. Now, there are drawbacks with daisy chaining in relation to using an ABY switch, especially modern ABY switches that have phase inversion and also ground hum elimination. So daisy chaining means that your amps might not run in phase. And that's a whole video in itself, amps in phase, out of phase, it's crazy. But I'm pretty sure these were in phase. It didn't sound to me, because the sound that was captured, although it was a lot cleaner than it appears in the room, trust me, was pretty much the sound I had in the room. So I don't feel there was any phase issues there whatsoever. So it does sound right to me. But you can run into phase issues daisy chaining. You can get that. Well, side point. The Fender Deluxe here has two inputs on the normal channel and two inputs on the vibrato channel. And you can actually daisy chain the normal channel to the vibrato channel on a Fender amp like this, like a deluxe reverb or a twin. But the two amps are wired out of phase. So if I was to daisy chain from input 1 to input 2 on the normal channel to the vibrato channel, and then come out of input 1 to my guitar, it would sound thin, wispy, and weedy, and it wouldn't give you any kind of like bottom end at all. It would sound crap, basically. So you can't really use this like that and it sound good. You can on some Fenders. I believe a Super Reverb you can do that better, but deluxe reverbs, as far as I know, they're wired, so the two channels work against each other and don't work. They're basically phase inverted, so you can't do it. You get phase problems. Okay, so but running the Vox and the Fender together seemed to be okay. So and it was really cool. And again, this is a thing that was done very heavily in the 60s and the 70s. Jimi Hendrix, I've seen Peter Green doing it, Danny Cohen doing it. Eric Clapton did it, but he never really used in Cream. Eric Clapton would only ever really use one Marshall stack. I remember reading it in his book. He said he had two Marshall stacks, but he only ever used to use one because he always found that using two was too much. Whereas Jimi Hendrix had three. Would invariably just use two. Jimmy would. I've never really. The only time I've ever seen Jimmy use three of his stacks behind him was at the Isle of Wight festival, and he doesn't start out that way. If you watch the Isle of Wight festival Jimi Hendrix gig DVD, he flips on his left Marshall, and then he flips on the middle Marshall, and he leaves the right one on standby. He doesn't touch it. But later on, because the gig's gone a bit naff, towards the end, he turns that one on as well, so he has basically 300 watts of Marshall going. So, like I say, and this is the thing that was done before ABY switches were a thing. You know, you had to do this to get two amps to run. You know, there was no other way of doing it. You had to daisy chain the amps together, and I really like it. I think it's it's kind of like one of those long lost things that people don't really do anymore, and I think kind of like I understand why people don't do it, but I think there's a charm to it. You know what I mean? The number one reason why people don't like to daisy chain is this. Right switch. That it's very noisy because you've got nothing to eliminate the ground hum, basically. So basically both amps are kind of like, you know, working off each other. If I was to unplug the Vox now, it'll shut up. You know, you just get the usual amp hiss because the amps are still on 10, so this is very, very loud. I'm glad the gem's turned down. I didn't think about that before I did this. Anyway, but if I plug the Vox back into the Fender now, it will start to buzz again. So, but the thing is, I mean, bear this in mind, people of the tube. I have both these amps on 10. They're both cranked to 10. You know, the Fender's on 10, the Vox is on 10, and it's very, very loud. Just to give you an idea. So this is the gem. You know, that's loud, man. Anyway, especially that. I just wanted to do that to show you. So, you know, that's beyond gig volume. Anyway, rattles your brain, that did. Okay, so, like I said, it peaked the camera as well, which is what I wanted it to do. But, if you're in like a club or a pub, or if you're on a stage, you know, you're not really going to hear that. You know, that's going to get lost in the ambience of people talking, or just in general the room. You know what I mean? You're not going to hear this buzz. You know what I mean? It's very, very subtle. Like I say, so the only real issue I feel with daisy chaining is phase. You know, getting the amps in phase, because invariably sometimes you'll get amps that don't like each other. I thought these sounded wicked together. I don't know if they were in phase or out of phase, but either way, the intro jam was these two together. I loved the sound. It was like it was a really oldie worldy blues tone to me. But here's an interesting thing, people of the tube, and this is something I always talk about when I talk about John Frusciante's setup. In the room, these two amps are a lot more overdriven than they are through the recording, which again could maybe lean to the fact that these are maybe out of phase with each other. Either way, I like the tone. But in the room, these amps are very overdriven. They're not distorted, but they're overdriven. You know what I mean? Like, you know, the Fender and the Vox, they both break up gorgeously there. Yeah, they just have that awesome thing. But on the recording, it sounds a lot cleaner. So it's very interesting, you know. And this is why I always talk about John Frusciante's like clean-ish tone, not being clean. You know, it sounds clean when you've recorded it, but if you actually hear it in the room, if you're stood in front of it, you'll find it's a lot more overdriven than it actually is. You know what I mean? It's a bizarre thing. It's just the way obviously microphones perceive sound and, you know, all sorts of other stuff that's going on. But if you're in the room, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised at how distorted John's amps are. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. I can't speak today. Pleasantly surprised of how distorted, overdriven these two amps are in the room as well. I mean, I don't think. I mean, it's going to peak the camera, but I don't know how well it'll come across. But this is going to be a bit silly. But I'm just going to hit an E chord. I think I can hack it for a split second. But this is an E chord. So that's loud. Let's just go quiet again. So there's quite a lot of overdrive there. It's not distortion, it's definitely overdrive, but there's a lot of kind of sustain there, and I don't know how well it'll pick up on the camera. Hopefully it's just kind of a distorted mess, which is great because that'll prove a point. But as soon as you record it in isolation with microphones, it becomes a lot cleaner. So that's what I say about John Frusciante's tone all the time is, you know, just because it sounds clean doesn't mean it is clean. It's a total what's the word I'm looking for there? Well, it's just totally different to what you expect, basically. Anyway, people of the tube. So, just to let you know what was going on in the intro jam as well. So, the Vox is mic'd up with a PV microphone. That's actually one of my favourite mics. It's a cheapo PV mic that I got years ago that I really like the sound of for guitars and vocals. It's got a real... I don't know, it's just got a really cool sound to it. I really like that microphone. I've got two of them as well because I liked them that much. I wanted to get another one just in case. So... the Vox is mic'd up. The speakers are mic'd up in my usual position, you know, just off the centre of the speaker. I've got a video on that if you're interested, where I mic up my amps. But they're mic'd in the same places. So I've got the PV mic on the Vox, and that's actually panned slightly left on the recording, so on the intro jam. So the Vox is slightly on the left, and then the Fender is mic'd up with the tried and true Mr. Shaw SM57, and that's panned slightly to the right. Another thing to note as well, all the reverb you're hearing in the intro jam is coming only from the Fender. The Vox is running totally dry. So it's basically a wet-dry rig, this is. Because the Fender's the only one with an effect on it, basically reverb. And I really like the sound. I thought it sounded wicked. And with the Gem, I thought it sounded like really classic, oldie, bluesy tone. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed the sound. And again... you got to think these amps are both cranked to the teeth, and the buzz was minimal. It wasn't very distracting, I've got to say, and it was really cool. Even when I turned the volume down, it doesn't really come across. So you got to think about that. But like I say, modern ABY switches and devices to make two amps run together with phase switching and ground lift switching. They do make this kind of like a cleaner thing, and also that means you can also you can link two amps together that maybe only just have one input. You know what I mean? Like say I could link my two Marshall MGs together, or a CR120 with a CR120. You know what I mean? If I use a box, I can't do that with just them as they are because they've only got one input. You need an amp with two inputs. So anyway, people of the tube. So that's the intro jam. What we're going to do now is I'm going to turn on the Marshall MG. And we're going to mic up the Marshall MG, and we're going to run that with the Vox. And we're going to, again, the Vox I'm just going to run flat out again. I'm just going to run it on 10, and I'm going to use OD1 on the Marshall. And then what we'll do is we'll take the deluxe reverb upstairs, and we'll run this with the CR120. Because this and the CR120, my God, very, very cool. And it'll be interesting to see how they record, actually, as well. So... it'll be interesting to see what happens. Okay, so people of the tube, I'm going to move the SM57 now over to the Marshall. So now the Marshall will be slightly over to the right side of the audio if you're listening. So Vox on the left, Marshall will be on the right. And when we go upstairs, the CR120 will be on the left and the Fender will be on the right. Okay, so anyway, people of the tube, let me rearrange these microphones and rearrange where the camera is and all that kind of thing. You won't be able to see the Vox. I'm going to move the camera around so you can just see the Marshall. But the Vox is still mic'd up. I'm not going to move that mic. I'm just going to put the 57 over there. Anyway, I hope that's explained what daisy chaining is. Like I say, it's very simple. You're just taking the guitar lead out of one, into the other, and then coming out that amp into your guitar or pedals or whatever. And people used to do it all the time. And I think it's kind of one of those things that kind of has fallen by the wayside and shouldn't have done, because I think it's really cool. Anyway, you know, I really love daisy chaining amps. I think it's something really cool in it. And well, I'll talk a bit more later on. Anyway, let's make some more noise. Marshall, Vox, and then we'll have the orange and the Fender. Let's go. Okay, people of YouTube, I've had a second thought. I thought I'd show you how I'm going to link the Marshall with Vox. Okay, so input on the Marshall, so lead goes in, okay, and then the other end of the lead will be taken over here to Mr. Vox. There's leads hanging off the camera, and we're going to plug that into the low impedance on the Vox. Okay, so that's now the Marshall into the Vox, and then this one is going to go into the high impedance, and that goes to Mr. Jen. And that's it. That's daisy chained. So now we get to have fun and make noise. Okay, people of YouTube. So annoyingly, for some reason, the low input on the Vox doesn't like anything to do with the Marshall. So I'm going to have to use the Fender instead. So what you're going to hear, the Fender Deluxe and the Marshall MG instead. I'm not happy with Vox now. I really want to hear them go together. And it's not going to... Just turn the camera off. Crikey. I don't know how well that's recorded yet, but that was loud. My God, that was a lot louder than the Vox and the Fender. Ah! My God. I'm glad I was wearing earplugs. I'd be dead. God. There was so much low end on that. It was immense. Loved that. Enjoyed that. So let me tell you what was going on there, people with you, before we go and try the Fender and the Orange together. That's the one I'm really looking forward to doing. So I was coming out of the Marshall, going into the Fender, input 2, and then coming out input 1 to the Gem. And I had delay on the Marshall. Quite a drastic delay as well. So I had delay on the Marshall, no reverb, just delay. And then on the Fender Deluxe, I had the reverb turned up to 4. It was on 3 on the intro jam. It's on 4 now. And basically the same kind of deal, basically. Switched microphones over. The PV mic is now on the Fender and the 57 is on the Marshall. So anyway, people of YouTube, I hope that came across okay, because that was absolutely monstrous. My God, that sound, you didn't need a bass player. You wouldn't need a bass player with that sound. Plus, if you had a bass player, you'd never hear them. So that was massive. That was awesome. So it was the OD1 on the Marshall as well. So anyway, people of YouTube, let's move the Fender upstairs. Let's try it with the orange. And yeah, I like that. I like that one a lot. That's great. Okay, people of the tube, this is the last 2 amps I'm going to daisy chain. I've got earplugs in, so if I'm shouting, I do apologise. There's definitely more ground hum with these two. There was more ground hum with the Fender and the Marshall as well. The quieter setup was the Vox and the Fender. But it's still not atrocious. You know what I mean? It's still no, negligible. You wouldn't hear it in like a noisy venue. You really wouldn't hear it at all. Anyway, this is going to be interesting. So, out of the input of the orange, we're going into input 2 on the Fender. Then out of input 1, we're going into the Gem. Okay, so let's see what this sounds like. Okay, people, there you go. So, as I would like to play more, but because the setups are so loud, I've got to be respectful of other people. I'm not on my own in the middle of nowhere. I do have neighbours, so I can only do it for a certain period of time, which is respectful but kind of annoying because I want to play louder for longer, but I can't. But it's okay because hopefully that came across okay. Anyway, people, like I say, I wanted to do a quick video on daisy chaining. I wanted to do a long video, but I can't, unfortunately, because it's so loud. But I wanted to do this video because I feel daisy chaining is one of those things that kind of, I can understand why it gets overlooked in this day and age, but I think there's a charm to it. You know what I mean? Yeah, fair enough, it's kind of like an oldie-worldy way of linking two amplifiers together and this, that, and the other. But I think there's definitely something to the sound that's a little bit different to using an ABY switch. An ABY switch might be cleaner, it's quieter, you've got the phase issue. If you've got a phase issue, you can get rid of that. But I don't know, there's just something very, very cool about linking two amps together through inputs. You know what I mean? And just cranking them, in that oldie-worldy way, like oldie-worldy, 1960s way of just kind of like daisy chaining amplifiers together and just like turn them up. I love it and it's great. And again, two different amplifiers, but I think these amps work really well together. I hope that came across okay. But I really like the sound of the Orange and the Fender. If I ever get to gig again, if that ever becomes a thing, I'm going to actually use these two together at a gig. I'm gonna run both of them because I think it'd be wicked. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Out of all the setups today, this was my favourite. I really enjoyed this. And I say the Fender appeared in every single one of them because the Vox decided it didn't want to work. But yeah, I'll turn the camera off and then I'll do this another day and it'll work fine because that's what things do, isn't it? Anyway. But yeah, the Fender just kind of appeared in every setup. But like the Fender and the Orange, I don't know what it is, but to me they really sounded great. I don't know. Hopefully it came across. In the room, it was humongously loud though. I mean, I said I've got the volume on the Fender on 10. I've got the volume on the CR120 at 6. And that's so loud. It's so loud. Like I say, that's why I'm keeping it as short as I can. Anyway, people chew. Hope you enjoyed the vid on daisy chaining. I hope it's kind of like, I hope the sounds came across okay, and I hope it's kind of like, a bit of food for thought in it for daisy chaining, because it is cool. Yes, you get ground hum. Sometimes your amps aren't going in phase, and you can't do anything about that if that is the case. But I think there is a certain little charm in daisy chaining amplifiers. Again, I think it's really, really cool. And so a lot of our heroes did it, Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, all these guys, they were daisy chain amplifiers, and I think it's really cool. It's really, really cool, and I like it. And the buzz, yeah. It's all good. You want your amps want a buzz. If your amps are on and it's this quiet, I'd be worried. I'm scared of that. I always like my amps to kind of do some kind of humming when they're on, because I don't like it when they're totally quiet, because it freaks me out. Because I think, what's wrong with it? Is it broken? I like it when you can hear some kind of like kind of going on, because it makes the amp feel alive. Especially when it starts to hiss as well, when it's cranked to the teeth. It's great. Anyway. Like I say, I hope you enjoyed this video, everybody. I hope it's somewhat informative. I do try. I hope there's something in there though for you. And I hope it's kind of like I hope it's been fun. I hope the sounds have come across okay. That's the kind of my main worry on this vid. But I hope they come across okay. And like I say, and here, by the way, people of the tube, let's think. The Orange was on the left and the Fender was on the right, and the Orange was dry. I didn't have reverb on the Orange. The Orange was totally dry. All the reverb again coming from the Fender. So so just to go through the setups again, the Vox and the Fender. The Vox was dry, the Fender was wet with reverb. With the Marshall and the Fender, the Marshall had delay and the Fender had reverb. So it's kind of like a wet rig, if you will, wet rig. And then with the Orange and the Fender, the Orange was dry and the Fender had reverb on it. So. Again, wet, dry kind of thing. So, anyway, people, I hope you enjoyed this vid. I hope it's been some, like I say, I hope it's been somewhat informative. I'm repeating myself now. And, yeah, hope you enjoyed it. And I hope the sounds came across okay. I'm so terrified about that. In every video, I'm always like, I hope it sounds like it sounds in the room. I don't know. My brain. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you again. Have a great one. Goodbye now. Thank you for watching. Haha!